You ever watch a match where the scoreline feels like it's lying to your face? Because 3-0 doesn't tell you anything about how weird, how slow burning, how absolutely migraine inducing that game was. Until suddenly, with the subtlety of a frying pan to the skull, it wasn't. It doesn't tell you how tense the air was in Asturias tonight, how Oviedo's entire stadium felt like it was holding its breath for 90 minutes, hoping, just maybe, that the football gods had drunk a little too much wine and left Real Madrid vulnerable for the night. But no, football gods weren't drunk. They were just cruel. Real Madrid have played bigger matches, wilder ones. But this one felt like a weird dream where you're running through molasses. Oviedo were the molasses, sticky, stubborn, and allergic to opening up. Every time Madrid tried to move, step, flick, pivot, pass, there were blue shirts swarming like bees at a picnic. For nearly 40 minutes, the richest club in the world was just a sweaty tourist trying to navigate a narrow street filled with people who won't move. And then Mbappé did what Mbappé does. He snapped the game in half. It was like Madrid had been playing with invisible shackles on until Arda Güler picked a lock with a pass that could have been carved into marble. Honestly, it was a hate crime against defensive lines. He saw a seam that didn't exist, invented it, and dropped the ball into the path of a sprinting Mbappé like he was handing Excalibur to King Arthur. No hesitation, no overthinking. Mbappé takes it in stride, lashes it into the bottom corner like he's swatting away a fly, and boom, 1-0. A goal that felt inevitable and impossible at the same time. And just like that, Oviedo's perfect plan cracked. Not exploded. Cracked. You could feel it. Not a collapse, but a realization that they were going to need more than shape and fight and a nostalgic crowd to survive this. The first half ended like a movie where the villain finally finds out he's been tracked all along. Oviedo had their little moments, their micro-rebellions, Chera's early press, Rondon's hold-up play. Honestly, I wanted to build a statue to that man just for making Rudiger sweat a little. But it was mostly posturing. Madrid had the ball, the calm, the structure. Oviedo had noise and hope. Second half? Weirdly more of the same. Madrid came out with their usual "we're going to choke you slowly" energy, but Oviedo didn't fold. They actually looked more dangerous after halftime. For a hot minute, it felt like they might just club Madrid over the head with an ugly, scrappy equalizer. Sibo hit the post. That ball kissed the woodwork like it was writing a love letter to chaos. It came out as if the goal itself had a clause in its contract, no joy allowed. That strike, off the outside of the post, was the kind of thing you replay in your head for years. Sibo deserved a goal. He deserved to shatter the illusion of Madrid's invincibility for at least 5 minutes. But the post had other ideas. And football, as it loves to do, punished Oviedo's hope with clinical cruelty. One moment you're dreaming. The next, Mbappé's punching the air while Vinicius Jr. jogs away like he just remembered he left the stove on. Let's talk about that second goal, because it was vintage Madrid in the most anti-vintage way possible. No flash, no glitter. Just Vinny Jr., fresh off the bench, being a menace in midfield, yes, midfield, winning a loose ball like he was stealing candy from a child who'd had it coming, and then sliding a perfectly timed ball into Mbappé's feet. And Mbappé, because he's Kylian Mbappé, shaped his body like a sculptor already knew how this statue would look and slotted it home like it was beneath him. 2-0. Oviedo weren't just beaten, they were undone by precision. The third goal? By then it felt like Madrid were being polite, like they'd realized they hadn't quite extinguished the last ember of resistance and decided to go full fire extinguisher. But that goal, that Vinicius Jr. goal, had just enough artistry to make you wince. Brahim Diaz plays a pass so casual it should have been wearing flip-flops. Alexander-Arnold does a dummy so sexy it should have been censored. And Vinny, cool as the back of the pillow, slots it home like he's turning off a light switch. 3-0. Game, set, reputation. And yet, somehow, it still didn't feel like a battering. It felt like someone carving out a win with a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer. And yet, there was tension in that. Not every dominant performance has to scream. Some of them whisper menacingly, and Madrid? Tonight they whispered like a bedtime story you suspect ends in your house catching fire. Oviedo didn't play like relegation fodder. That's the sick part. They played like a side that belonged. They kept shape, they hunted in packs, and they almost got their moment. But there's a gulf, a chasm, And Real Madrid didn't bridge it. They let Oviedo walk to the edge, stare across it, and then feel the ground disappear under them. The crowd knew it too. They clapped the tackles, they groaned at the fouls, and when that third goal went in, they didn't boo, they just exhaled. Because deep down, they knew that sometimes the better team doesn't just win. It waits, it watches, and then it takes what it came for. You could see it in Alonso's face. He wasn't thrilled. This wasn't champagne football. It was chess. Grind. Control. Real Madrid were not the better team in the most exciting way. They were better in the cold, clinical, heartbreaking way. And that might be worse. Oviedo had their narrative. First top-flight home game in 24 years. A crowd that had waited, clawed, begged for nights like this. And what they got was a harsh lesson. The mountain isn't climbed just by wanting it more. Madrid had all the risk in the world. A promoted side with nothing to lose. A slippery pitch. A game too early in the season to pretend cohesion is guaranteed. And they came out looking, not bothered. Not because they were cocky, but because they knew their floor is most clubs' ceiling. Their off night is still enough to win by 3. And maybe that's the story of this match. Not a contest. A reminder that when Madrid turn the key, just once, the door flies open. But before we move on, can we spare a moment for the silence between goals? The weird in-between. The sense that Oviedo were constantly one bad bounce away from believing. That silence, that desperation, was the most electric thing in the match. Because that's what sport gives you. Not just the moments that happen, but the belief that something might. And that belief was fed by the fact that Real Madrid didn't sparkle. Mbappé scored twice, sure, Vini finished the third, but no one else felt dominant. It wasn't a galaxy of stars blinding their opponent. It was a few key bursts of light in a dark, frustrating tunnel, which is where we're headed next. Because if Madrid's win was clinical, then the story lives in the individuals, in the players who did too little, too much, or just enough. Let's talk about them, player by player, moment by moment, because sometimes it's not the goals that tell the story, it's who didn't score, who didn't show up, who flickered for a moment and then vanished into the midfield fog like a ghost with hamstrings. Let's start at the top. Kylian Mbappé. I mean, what do you even say at this point? He scores goals like most people check their phones. And tonight, he looked bored for long stretches, genuinely bored. And then, snap, he turns the match like he's flipping to the next episode. That first goal? You couldn't write it better if you tried. The movement was instinct. The finish was venom. The second was colder, meaner, more calculating. It was Mbappé doing math while everyone else is finger painting. And yes, he had a few tame efforts, including one late on that Escandel saved, but that's part of the terrifying truth. He only needs one moment. 2, if you let him breathe. Vinicius Jr. was only on the pitch for about 30 minutes, but his cameo had everything: pace, chaos, invention, and of course, the goal. The dive, though? Comedic gold. Full Olympic commitment. But then he goes and wins the ball like a scrappy midfielder, assists Mbappe's second, and strolls in with the third like he just remembered he's world class. That's Vini in a nutshell. Street footballer 1 minute, cold-blooded finisher the next. Now Arda Güler. This kid. 20 years old, and already passing like he sees time in slow motion. That through ball to Mbappé was an act of footballing blasphemy. He didn't just see the pass, he invented it. Aside from that, he was tidy, occasionally tentative, but always with that little flicker of genius behind the eyes. He was subbed out early, and Alonso probably just wanted to preserve the Mona Lisa before the paint started to run. Let's talk Franco Mastantuono. 18 years old. You could see the nerves dancing around him like mosquitoes in the heat. He had flashes, that run, that little nutmeg that didn't draw the foul, and he showed his dribbling as an asset. But it was clear he wasn't quite synced with the rhythm yet. Like he was playing jazz in a classical orchestra. That's not a criticism. It's a warning. This kid's got something. He just needs to find the frequency. Rodrigo, on the other hand, looked like a guy trying really hard to remind everyone he's still in the band. Started sharp. That early shot was spicy. He made Oviedo work, but as the game wore on, he faded. One moment he's dancing into the box, the next he's just not there. Like the Wi-Fi dropped. When Vinicius came on, the shift was immediate, and Rodrigo knew it. In midfield, Federico Valverde was everywhere and nowhere. One of those matches where he runs and runs and you feel like he should have had a statue built by minute 70. But then you realize no killer pass, no goal, no moment, just noise, just sweat. He had that one shot that Escandel turned wide. Could have changed the game, didn't. Aurélien Tchouaméni, though? Oh, he was a nuisance. The kind of defensive midfielder that just keeps reappearing like a pop-up ad. His tackle on Dendoncker that led to the first goal was chef's kiss. Clean, crunching, controversial. The crowd hated it, which is to say, it was perfect. He broke things up, plugged holes, and honestly saved his defenders from a lot of extra work. Which brings us to the back line. Alvaro Carreras and Dani Carvajal were solid. Not electric, not magical, just solid. Carvajal had his little battle with Chaira, and for the most part came out on top, but you felt the wear. He got subbed off for Trent Alexander-Arnold, who immediately made a dummy that contributed more to a goal than Carvajal had in 90 minutes. Funny how that works. Subtle, but smug. Antonio Rudiger was his usual chaotic self. At one point, he was playing chicken with Rondon like two bulls in a field, both pretending they don't care. He kept things locked down but never looked comfortable. Dean Huijsen beside him? Better. Cleaner. Like someone doing homework with one eye on the clock. He didn't dazzle, but he never panicked either, even when Oviedo tried to go Route 1. Thibaut Courtois? Vintage wall. He had barely anything to do. Oviedo were generous that way. But when Ajaria uncorked that late shot, Courtois sprang to his right like a man possessed. That's why you pay him the big bucks. Not for volume of work, for moments. And he had his. Let's not forget Brahim Diaz, who got 20-ish minutes and used them like a man with a resume to update. He didn't score, but he carved space, made passes, and set up Vinny's goal like it was choreographed. Like, hey, I've seen this move in rehearsal. Gonzalo Garcia and Daniel Ceballos came on late, jogged around a bit, added some symmetry to the substitutions. Not much else. That's okay. Not everyone needs a highlight reel. Now, Oviedo. Oh, Oviedo. They were not passengers. They were participants. They were believers. Aaron Escandel had a day. Conceded 3, yes, but he also made saves that kept the scoreline from turning into a funeral dirge. That save off Mbappé at 2-0? Beautiful. His punch from the corner? Assured. He was everywhere he could be. And where he couldn't be, well, welcome to La Liga. Kwasi Sibo was this close to being a headline, that shot off the post, inches away from turning the game into chaos. He also put in a shift in midfield, always pressing, always clawing. If Oviedo stay up this year, Sibo will be one of the reasons. Leander Dendoncker had one of those games where he was both warrior and victim. He was scrapping, driving forward, playing outlet passes, and then he gets cleaned out by Tchouaméni for the first goal. That's football for you. 1 minute you're building something, next minute someone knocks it down and blames you for the mess. Rondon. Bless him. He held up the ball like he was protecting family heirlooms. Fought off Rudiger, gave Oviedo breath, never looked like scoring, but he made Madrid feel him. That matters. Then there's the heartbreakers. Chaira, who had flashes. Costas, who worked like a man chasing redemption. Ajaria, who came on late and nearly made Courtois a meme. Calvo, who just got cooked repeatedly. The dummies, the flicks, the dribbles, the passes that split atoms. All those individual performances wove together into a result that will read as comfortable in history books. But it wasn't. Not really. It was a performance built on tightrope walking and small mercies. Madrid got the points, Oviedo got the lesson, and the rest of us, we got a reminder. That football doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. And when Real Madrid whisper, you listen. This has been Across the Pitch. Over and out.